As it is each first day of the week, it is good to be able to gather together in worship. And this morning, looking at a passage, will be in Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20 for this morning's lesson. And Jesus gives us a parable. In this parable, he tells us several things, but the bulk or the pull from it that I see here is receive what is right. We see this phrase a couple of times as we're going to see it as we read through it. But it's also about our focus of what is supposed to be. Christ teaches us to look at what is right and not to our own desires. We're going to see how that phrase is portrayed throughout this parable. And of course, a parable being an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And we see this in the very first verse where he says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning." He is comparing something that they are aware of to something that they are still trying to figure out. They understand this idea of looking for hired laborers, either from the person that's hiring them or the person that is being hired. They understand having to work for the day. But as we start to go through this, Jesus brings the daily actions of the people to use to explain heaven and how our attitude ought to be. So Jesus gives this parable of being able to receive after the work is done. We notice that as well. It is a gift of God. The ability to work in His vineyard is a gift. It is an open invitation, but yet work still has to be accomplished. And so Jesus shows all of these things. As we start to look through these verses, Jesus tells us that laborers are needed. The field is white unto harvest, but there is much work to be done. We can look over to Matthew 9 and see that he makes that statement earlier in his ministry, but now in Matthew chapter 20, we're going to dig through and look at this right here. So as we look over all of verse 1, I stopped early in my introduction. So, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. The landowner goes out and starts seeking those who are willing to work. We have to notice that part, though. They are willing to work. In this day and time, in the Bible times, it was not uncommon that they would go and stand in the marketplace and wait for someone to come by saying, "I'm looking for laborers. I need some work." And so the workers would go because, today we're accustomed to, being under a contract or just hired until. But in this day and time, you were hired for the day in a lot of cases. Now, we're going to see one person in this account, in this parable, that was probably on salary, I would assume, because he was given charge over the money. So that person that comes in later is probably on salary, as we would call it today. Everyone else is hired by the day. And so they're going out and in the morning. So early in the morning for them would be about 6 a.m. They ran about a 12-hour day. So, at 6 a.m. is early in the morning. That is when their day began. And so we see going through verses 2 through 7, and we're going to kind of come back and forth on some of this a little bit, but we see the points that the master went back out at the 3rd hour, the 6th, the 9th, and the 11th hours of the day. Now, what this means for them is that I've got it over here on the side, is that he went out so early in the morning. He started going out looking for laborers at 6 a.m. So then the 3rd hour of the day would be 9 a.m., then we have 12 p.m., 3 p.m., and 5 p.m. 5 is getting at the end of the workday, because if it's a 12-hour day, sun comes up at 6, it goes down at 6. 6 o'clock is about the end of the day. But he says, I've got a lot of work that needs to be done. We understand, being in a farming area, that when it's time to go, it's time to go. They put in days, and now they've got headlights on those tractors that they can go from before the sun comes up till after it goes down. With the equipment, even with all the equipment they have, they're running because they have so much land and everything. Here, we understand timing. Think about the landowner here. He is very much aware of his crops. He knows when the right time is, and being in the vineyard here, they use these grapes or whatever he's growing very predominantly in culture and in their area, so that you want to pick them when it's just right. And that window is pretty short. And so you need a lot of laborers to come at one time to get the job done. And if you don't have enough in the field, you keep looking for more to come and come and come to get the job done before it's too late. You want to pick them at their peak. And it is a manual, intense process. So going through these times, the master keeps on going and accomplishes all of these things. He collected those that were willing to work, as I've already kind of emphasized a little bit, but he offers them wages. So at the first of the day, he says that in verse number 2, now when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them to the vineyard. These are the ones at 6 a.m. He says, I will give you a denarius, which is a standard currency of the day. It is a going rate for a day's worth of work, and this was a day's worth of work. It's not going out, hey, why don't you come over here and sit down and watch this. You're out in the sun, you're out in the fields, you are working all day long. And it's interesting to see as it goes by, but those at the 11th hour, I want to take a look at this. Verses 6 and 7, he gets down to almost the end of the day. He still needs workers, but what does he do different at this case? Everyone else, he came and said, he's finding people standing in the marketplace and say, come work in my vineyard. Come work in my vineyard. But at the 11th hour, verse 6, and about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle. Well, the others that he found were standing around too, but for some reason it makes an emphasis on these who are at the end of day. They are standing idle. And he said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day? Notice the emphasis I've been putting on this about those who are willing to work. The master here is saying, why are you just sitting around all day? He knows that he's been through multiple times looking for workers. Others have done the same. So the answer he received was, they said to him in verse 7, because no one hired us. What would your answer be? If you're looking for work to be able to provide a meal for yourself and for your family, and you're standing around the marketplace all day long, have you been where you need to be in order to receive work? Or are you avoiding work? It's like, oh, here comes someone to give me work. Let me duck around the corner real quick so he doesn't see me, so I can try and make it look like I'm trying to get work, but I really don't want to do anything. I think the master here was trying to find out, are you just lazy, or have you not been able to acquire work? They said to him, because no one has hired us. And because they gave that answer, he says, go into my vineyard and receive what is right. After they answered correctly, after they showed ambition that they did want to work, they were allowed to come in and go and work. Now, going back and looking at the idea of the wages and filling in some of these spots, I know I've skipped a few of the wording in these verses. We're going to fill it in here in a second. The wages of the day. I made the comment about in verse number 2, he told the people that were working all day long for a denarius. That's the appropriate wage there. The others agreed to whatever was right by the landowner. Verses 4 and 5 say that, and he said to them, talking about those of the third hour, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you. Verse 5, again, he went out at the sixth and ninth hour and did likewise. So those that were at the sixth and ninth got the same proposition as those on the third hour. Whatever is right I will give you. Now, for those that showed up at the 6 o'clock and agreed to a full day's wages, received a full day's wages. For those of us that are familiar with hourly employment, if I don't work all day long, do I expect to get paid the full amount for working all day long? On an hourly system, the answer is no. I expect to get paid for the hours that I worked. So those that were hired at the third, sixth, and ninth, the owner said, whatever is right, I will pay you. They're thinking, okay, it's going to be a prorated amount. A denarius is for a whole day, so if I only work half a day, I'm probably getting half a denarius. Those at the sixth hour makes it easy math there. Or the others, it gets broken up by quarters, or it gets broken up in a certain way. And so then he comes and says to those at the 11th hour in verse 6, idle, and at the end of that one at verse 7, to fill the rest of that verse, you also go to the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive. Now, if I'm looking at a denarius a day, and that is enough to feed me and my family, and I get hired to work 1 hour, do I expect to get paid very much? Do I expect to have a full belly at the end of this day or the start of tomorrow, or to be able to feed my whole family off of 1 hour's wage instead of a 12-hour wage? This is what we're seeing putting into practice of what they see in that day and time. This is the parable, is that the landowner is saying, whatever is right, I will give you. And we see the basis at beginning of day is for a full day's wage. And everyone else is told whatever is right. So if I'm sitting there listening to Jesus tell this, I'm thinking that it's probably going to be prorated. Well, the 12-hour day, they get the full wages because they worked all day, they earned it. The others, they get what they get because they earned what they got. Imagine the twist that we're about to see. At the end of the day, the master saw to it. Another thought about this parable. The master is active in the whole process. The master is going out and getting those who would work. The master comes to his servant here at the end of the day at verse 8, to his steward who is over the money to make payments. The master is there to handle the conflicts that come. The master is very much involved in this process. We'll see the importance of that in a moment. He chose to pay them in reverse order. Verse number 8, so when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, call the laborers and give them their wages. They have worked, they have earned this, they shall receive what is theirs. And we go back to Leviticus 19:13 or Deuteronomy 24:14, listed earlier in this outline. They were to be paid at the end of each day. That was the agreement that they were to do, and so this master is upholding the laws. He says the day is done, the payments are due. Pay them. But he does something very different here. When it came, pay them their wages, beginning with the last to the first. And when those who came were hired about the 11th hour. So instead of paying those that have been in the field all day long first, he says pay the last first. The ones who just got here, who have been waiting all day to come to do any work, but they've done the least amount of time in the field, pay them first. And I think Jesus is doing it this way, illustrating the master of this manner to show this next part. If the first would have received their denarius and moved on, they wouldn't see what the last one got. I think he does this to show them and to illustrate something. So as we finish this verse right here, verse number 8, last of the first, continuing to verse 9, and when those who came who were hired at the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. Now the master promised a denarius and was agreed upon by those who came at 6 a.m. at the beginning of day. Everyone else received what is right, and the master now gives the one who worked a single hour a denarius. When the first came, they supposed that they would receive more, and they likewise each received a denarius. I don't know of very many businesses that say, all right, I will hire you for this amount, and at the paycheck period decide to give you a bonus every single time. You might have one that give like an end-of-year bonus or something like that, but we agreed upon, in this case, we agreed upon a denarius. You worked all day. These only worked a little bit, and I gave them a full denarius, so we agreed on something, but I'm going to boost it up and give you a bonus. No, that wasn't the agreement. The agreement was you will receive a denarius, and so they all received a denarius. And this shows the generosity of the owner. The landowner knows the expenses of the living, of what's going on. He knows that they won't be able to support themselves or their families if they go home on an hour's wage, but maybe he just wants to be generous. He said, receive what's right. You came and worked in the vineyard. And you actually came to my vineyard to work. I hired you to work in my field, and you actually came to my field. That's another key point. We got to work in the right field if we're hired by the master. I can't be hired by one person and go work someone else's field and expect to get paid by the guy I made the bargain with. It doesn't work that way. So what does this even mean? That's the parable. That's the story that he gave. So what does this mean to us? Why is Jesus telling us this? Go back to verse number 1 with me. For the kingdom of heaven is like this landowner. The landowner is God. The workers are us. The people being hired. The people coming to him and working in his fields. Christians who accept the call of God through his gospel, through the word, through Christ, are the workers, being hired at all times of the day. We see all times because we see that in Acts chapter 2, we saw the first that were called into the fields. Then we see, Acts chapter 1, we have the apostles. Acts chapter 2, they called everyone through the first gospel sermon, and about 3,000 that day were added. And then we see the following days and multitudes were added. And we see down the road, we see through the different things, all the way through the book of Acts. Different days, different times, after the dispersion from Jerusalem, they went out into the areas all the way to today. If we notice, we're still being called into the vineyard today. This is one long day, isn't it? When we look at the word day, we have to think about the way it is used in the time and how it is related sometimes. You know, when we look at it, Jesus refers to a day as being our life. In John chapter 9, verses 4 and 5, Jesus says, I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Jesus illustrates day, in this case, means our life. When night comes, we can find in the Bible a lot of times when it says they have fallen asleep. It does not mean that they're taking a nap. It does not mean that they're sleeping overnight. Sometimes asleep means that they are dead physically. Jesus says that while it is day, as long as I'm in the world, the day that he is referring to in this parable is our life. There is much work to be done while we are alive, and we can only do it while we're alive. Jesus said, I can only do the work while I'm with you. When I go back to heaven, I can't work here on earth. I can't be in two places at one time. That's something we need to think about. All those who accept the call and work as the master commanded in the place that the master has commanded are rewarded. We see that the master said, whatever is right, I will give you. Those who worked all day received a denarius. Those who worked a portion of the day received a denarius. There is no minimum time of service required to receive the reward of God the Father. The Father says, I will reward you for working in the field. If you become a child of mine, a worker of mine in the parable, and you take and do this, you do what you are hired to do, you will receive what is right. And God the Father says, I am not a respecter of persons. Which means if you work, you will be rewarded for the work you have done. You will be rewarded for working. Let me correct that phrase. Everyone received a denarius. The problem is, too many might think about this parable and say, oh, I can wait till the 11th hour and get the full reward. The problem is we don't know when that 11th hour or the 12th hour specifically will come. We don't know what hour of life we're in. We also see there is much work to be done. Once we are hired, we are to work. But I also see in this parable that he tells us that there's a little sign up on the wall that says, no complaining allowed. If we continue down from verse 10, when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more. This is where I see receive what is right, not what our own desires think of. Because they thought that, well, I was agreed upon for denarii, surely I'll get more because I worked through the heat of the day. I worked all day long. I started at the beginning. I've been in the master's service for a long time. They were just a little bit. I'm surely going to get a little bit of icing on my cake. But they likewise received a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, these last men only worked an hour. And you made them equal to us who have been borne the burden of the heat of the day? But he answered one of them and said, friend, am I doing you no wrong? Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give this last man the same as you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? And to drive the point home, he says, is your eye evil? You have just spent all day long working in the vineyard for me, and I have paid you what you are owed by what we have agreed upon, and you are greedy? You are coveting? Is your eye evil because I am good? God is good, and he can give us what he wants to give us. Through his grace and mercy, he allows any who come to him at any point in their lives the same reward. He has offered the reward of heaven to those who follow him. So the last will be first, and the first for last, for many are called, but few are chosen. The laborers all agreed to work, and the reward, knowing their labor, was until the end of the day. They all agreed, whatever is right, I will give you. God says what is right is that I will let my grace and mercy cover you through the blood of Jesus Christ if you will come and live and work for me. It is God's right to be able to do that. He doesn't have to say, well, because you worked all your life, I'll let you all the way inside into a big mansion. But you only started working at the end of your life. You got to sit at the gate. No, he says there are gates of heaven. You're either inside or outside. That's God's grace and mercy. That is God's whatever is right. Jesus teaches us through this parable and many others that we must do something for God to receive what He offers. We are not working our way to heaven. The working in the field does not earn them the reward. Following the commands of the master receives the reward. And that is an illustration of it doesn't matter what hour you are hired at. If you are hired by the master and you work in his field, the work that he has set forth for us to do, we will receive what he has promised to give us. Because he has chosen to give it to us if we follow his commands. And there's a host of verses right here that we can trace out and see that we have something we must do, but it is not of our own accord, it is not of our own merits. The work we are to do is of God. I can take and work merits, and I can work all sorts of extra things in this world to get promotions or to do other things and to rise the company ladder or to receive a bonus or something like that. Maybe there's an incentive at work that says if you do this much or this, then you'll receive a little extra. Those are things of merit. Those are things I do. But when it comes to God, Jesus makes the comparison. There's work in the vineyard, and that's what the work is. Do what you've been hired to do. God has called us to work the works of righteousness. Jesus shows us how to do that because we already read, I must do the works of him who sent me. Even Jesus had to do something. We partook of the Lord's Supper a little while ago. That was a big something that he did. It didn't bring works of merit. It was obedience to the Father. And that was a hard one, but one that he did do. Sometimes we have things in our lives that are hard to do. Sometimes we labor in the heat of the day, as some of these laborers did. Do we push through the heat of the day, knowing that our reward is awaiting us at the end of the day? Or in the sense of the parable, do we push through the hard times of life, doing the works of God, that we might receive the reward that he has so generously offered us? Jesus simply said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. He also said that we can come to him for rest, because he brings what is from the Father. And what's from the Father is a promise of what is right. The reverse is true as well. If we choose not to work, if we choose to go to the wrong field and work over there instead and still want to get payment, we're not going to receive that reward. We'll be standing in line, waiting for payment that never comes. And sadly, the world is full of those in the wrong line. I pray that those here and those that are listening to this message are in the right line to receive the payment. They're in the right field. We get in line at the end of the day. The day is still here. I pray we're in the right field working for the Master. If we're not, let's get there. If there's anything we can do to help in that process, if there's anything we can do to invite you to the field, the Master invites all to come. We are his messenger to help ensure that message is carried on. Come to the field. It is wide unto harvest and much work to be done, and the laborers are few. Let us continue the work that was started so many years ago by Christ and his apostles and the first Christians. The task is still here with us today. If we've become weary in working in the field, let us help one another. Let us encourage one another. Imagine the encouragement that at each of these hours that the master brought in new laborers. You look at a task and you're the first one there and you see this gigantic field that needs to be taken care of. It's like, there's no way I'm going to get all this done. And we're on a time crunch. And then more laborers come in. You kind of get a little pep of spirit. We can uplift one another in this process. Whatever the need is, we can help one another. But we can only do that if we know that there's a need. If we need to help you get into the field, if we need to help you encourage to continue the work, let us do so. If you have a need of the invitation, we offer it now while together we stand.